They are the single most maligned group on the San Francisco 49ers. But are they as bad as everyone says? We'll take a deep dive on that. Plus, why Ricky Pearsall is doing everything possible to make a big leap in year 2. Coming up next on the Bully Ball Podcast. What is good, everybody? Welcome to another Gold Standard podcast on the Gold Standard and the Fans First Sports Network. I'm Rob Stats Guerrera, filling in for Jason Aponte alongside Steph Sanchez. Steph, you're stuck with me again. Get it out in the open. I know it's coming.
I'm actually just texting Jay and telling him, why'd you leave me with Rob? Yeah. Again.
Thanks for that. I am the one that signs the checks. Just a little respect would be,
Well, hey, speaking of, the goatee still going strong?
Yeah, still going strong.
Kind of.
Well, I got a trimmer, so now I'm experimenting with all different lengths, and I don't know. I'm an idiot.
All right, that's the respect you're gonna get today for the goatee.
All right, it's not as good as any hair advice from Steph is always appreciated.
Hey, Diego in the comments says good hair day today. I'm assuming you're included in that, Rob.
I don't know. Look, compared to you, it's not good. It's like whoever's sitting next to, Aaron Donald in the photo, or who was that famous picture of DK Metcalf, and there was somebody next to him, but DK Metcalf just looks like a freaking monster in the photo. Yeah. That's what it's like to be next to you when we're talking hair.
Well, my height definitely won't do that to anyone, so it's good I could stand out in some fashion.
That is true. You are a tiny person. When I met you at the Levi's, I was like, "Oh my God, how can she see the game? Is she standing on the chair?"
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
That's where we're going.
I am short. Yeah.
All right. On today's show, we want to talk offensive line because you and Jay have been previewing the different position groups as we wait for training camp to get started. Today is offensive line day, and I'm glad we're doing this because I did a show with Michelle, and we went through some of the PFF grades for the offensive line. And after that, I was kind of like, maybe they're not as bad as I think. What are your thoughts on the O-line?
I definitely don't think they're as bad as, people think. I think a lot of 49er fans are focused on the 49ers only. And, obviously that makes a lot of sense. But if you look at offensive lines throughout the league and take the binoculars or the goggles off, it isn't just the Eagles who have this awesome offensive line, right? I think that's the example that the 49er fans always, gravitate to, but they're outliers in my opinion, right? If you look across the league, offensive line play in general is just not great. It just isn't. And so I don't think the 49ers offensive line is as bad as people make it out to be. I think 2024 was a down year. I think there's a lot of reasons for that. And it isn't all just because of injuries, or it isn't all just because of offensive line play in general. I think there's a lot of factors that contributed to that. But we'll talk about it. Yeah, I mean, the line allowed, I think it was 31 sacks in 2024. It might have been more. That was just ChatGPT number. It might have been more, but yeah, we gotta double check those. But yeah, I do think with the 49ers losing, and I say losing in air quotes because losing Aaron Banks is probably a gain. And if anything, I mean, there's an opportunity to improve at that spot, right? I think, the 49ers decided they want to let Jalen Moore walk as well. I think they have other guys who can fill in at, guard spots. So, or, be the backup tackle. There's definitely some questions there that I have still. But the big thing this year, Rob, is that, Trent Williams is going to be back. He missed a good portion of last year with the high ankle sprain. But if he's going to be back and he's going to be healthy, that already should improve the offensive line a lot. And one thing we do say about Trent Williams is that he's the glue, he's the anchor to that offensive line. and the people next to him, or, the left guard, is going to benefit from that. Well, last year, as I said, Aaron Banks was not very good. In fact, he was just straight up bad most of last year. So it didn't even matter that Trent Williams was there in that sense. But I think as a whole, whoever's going to fill in this year at that left guard spot should be in a much better position to be better than Aaron Banks was. And we know the win-loss record without Trent Williams. Obviously not having him is going to be a pretty big loss. Like last year, there were 5-5 in the games where he didn't play. So yeah, in the games that he did play. We know how the season went. There were a lot of injuries throughout the entire team, most definitely on the offensive side. Last week, we talked about Christian McCaffrey and how the impact of him coming back should be big for the offensive line. I think we could say the same thing about Trent Williams on the offensive line.
Oh, of course. I mean, you're talking about the all-pro left tackle when he's healthy. That's it. You just pencil him in every year. By the way, thank you, Sharks Fan 232, new YouTube channel member to your channel, I believe, Steph.
Oh,
Steph 49K.
Hey,
yeah.
Hashtag 49K. Let's drop them.
Yeah. So congratulations for that. You could become a member of this channel too. Just, throwing it out there, but certainly deserving. So thank you. We appreciate all the YouTube channel members. And I agree with what Diego says in the comments. Speaking of our YouTube channel members, most offensive line analysis and opinion comes from not knowing how to analyze offensive lines. And I say this myself, from me. I don't know how to analyze an offensive line, but here's one thing I do know that I feel like most fans don't acknowledge. Every sack, every quarterback hit is not always on the offensive line. It's not just they got beat, you didn't hold your block longer. Some of it is on the quarterback. Maybe the quarterback was taken, was supposed to get rid of the ball after a 3-step drop and didn't, or whatever the case may be. Maybe it was supposed to be a screen pass, whatever. Like, there are circumstances that mitigate sometimes the things that we see on the broadcast. But I think people are like, oh, nope, tip pass, that was on the offensive line. McKivitz sucks. This guy sucks. And it's like, not every time.
Yeah, and actually, as you say that, I kind of just want to talk about Brock Purdy for a quick second, because you're absolutely right. I think he contributed to a good portion of the offensive line's negative stats last year. And I'll tell you why. In 2024, we all know that his time to throw went up quite a lot. It went up 0.20 or so seconds. From the year prior. It was 2.73 in 2023, jumped up to 2.99 in 2024. It was like the 7th slowest or something around that range. And so that him hanging on to the ball a lot longer than he was the year prior, along with Trent Williams, missing half of the season, and, Jake Brendel somewhat being a shell of himself, like, all those are contributing factors. But, Brock Purdy holding on to the ball, scrambling, moving around in the pocket, certainly, like, doesn't help. There are times where moving in the pocket is good. Like, you could help your offensive line, but sometimes if you move out of your spot prematurely, if you need to, you actually could create pressures for yourself. And I do think Brock Purdy did that. Like, Rich Madrid on Twitter, watch the film. And it's true though. Like, he's posted so many examples of Brock Purdy bailing a little early, holding on to the ball a little too long, and in turn creates pressures or sacks or negative plays, for the offense. So I do think there's an emphasis on Brock Purdy getting back to what he was best at in 2023, right? Just getting rid of the ball quickly, being in full rhythm, with your offense and your receivers. I think we see that, and in turn, I think that's going to benefit the offensive line a lot, because I think everyone benefits from Kyle Shanahan's scheme.
Yes.
But it all has to work. Like, it all has to be executed properly, right? Like, if one person's not doing their job, it could all kind of like fall apart, because it's very much predicated on timing of things. And so if you're forcing your offensive line to, block a little bit longer than they have to, that's going to create issues. And so it was kind of a domino effect, I think, just for the offensive line and the offense as a whole last year. But yeah, I expect that will be better this year. And we were talking about, the left guard spot. Aaron Banks, not great. He was, he had 5 penalties last year, so contributed to that. Pass blocking grade was well below average. His run blocking grade was okay, which is kind of a theme when you look at the 49ers offensive line. They'll be pretty good. Like, they'll be solid at run blocking, but pass blocking is usually where they're not great. Trent Williams is the unicorn on the line who could do both at such an elite level, but most everyone and the 49ers prefer their offensive linemen to be better at run blocking than pass blocking. But this year, they have a hole to fill there, right, Rob? At left guard, they have options. Ben Barch, we saw Ben Barch play there a little bit last year. It was just a little preview of what it could be. The 49ers were interested in it. So, he's back on a 1-year deal. But he is, I think, the front runner to be the 49ers left guard in 2024. I mean, in the 65 snaps that he played, very small sample size, only 1 quarterback pressure, no penalties, no sacks. So he looked good. We definitely want to see that in a larger sample size. Definitely want to see it throughout training camp. And I think there will be some competition there as well, or at least they'll have other options that they'll probably plug in there and see how they do. I definitely think Matt Hennessy, who they signed this offseason, could be someone that they look at that left guard spot. Maybe even Spencer Burford, could be an option. He played a little bit of left guard last year due to the injuries, and I thought he looked fine when he played there. So that could be a good spot for him. Nick Zakelj, we've been wanting to see, is he going to be anything? I don't know, but he'll probably be working second, third team or something like that. And who knows? This is kind of the time for Nick Zakelj to see if he could be anything. But, the offensive line, they let him marinate in the background for a couple years before they like to give them that opportunity. So I don't know. Maybe Nick Zakelj will make strides this year. But I think it's going to be Ben Barch. Do you have any thoughts, Rob, on who will be the top option for left guard this year?
Barch seems to have the inside track right now. If you listen to Barrows and Kawakami talk about it, he seems to be the guy that has the inside track right now. Doesn't mean he'll keep it. If he's terrible in camp and terrible in the preseason, well, who knows? But that seems to be the guy that they are sort of penciling in right now. I really like this comment from Benali, who says the offensive line isn't as bad as fans think, but I don't think it's as good as the coaching staff seems to think.
Those can be true.
Yes, I think that is a very accurate. I mean,
yeah.
When Forster gets behind the mic and says that Jake Brendel had the highest graded year from any center that Kyle Shanahan has ever had, that is the kind of quote that makes us pull our hair out as fans, because we are sitting watching. And I understand that we're not offensive line analysts, and it's probably the most misunderstood unit in football, maybe. But damn, man, if he is the highest graded center you have ever had, 2 things are true. 1, you need to change your grading system, or 2, you have had some ass centers over the years with this team.
He has said some blasphemous things in regards to his offensive line, but kind of just go back to how the offensive line is so hard to grade. He kind of reminds us of that every time. I can't imagine how frustrating it might be for him to see what people say about the offensive line, because again, he knows the context, he knows the assignments, and we simply do not, and we never will. Even people who, watch a lot of film and know the 49ers playbook don't know exactly what they were asked to do at that moment. And especially in training camp, which is a whole nother thing. I know Chris Forster has also mentioned that in training camp, it's even more laughable to try to evaluate these guys from an outsider's perspective, because only Chris Forster knows what he's asking them to do in camp practices, and sometimes it's literally just experimental. Like you just want them to try something different to see how they do, and not that he's putting them in, positions to fail, but practice is for practicing things, right? And it's not always going to look clean, and it's not always going to look perfect in practice. So it is something for us all to remember. But I like that comment from Benali.
Benali has probably the best comments right now, certainly since the offseason started, for sure.
Sure. So on my channel as well.
She gets like 3 or 4 in per show, I feel like. But they're good. If they're good, I put them up. That's all I care about. Brisbee Life on Twitch, we love the Twitch fam, says, did that swing tackle officially sign, or is it up in the air? DJ Humphries did not sign with the 49ers. He signed with somebody else. I can't remember.
The Rams. He signed with the Rams.
So, yeah, no, that did not happen, even though his own agency was the one that said that he had agreed and signed with the 49ers. It's a wild. We can't have normal things in San Francisco. It's always got to be, oh, Eric Hendricks. Yeah, he's coming. Oh, no, he's not coming. And instead, we're going to get a guy that's going to quit on the team in the middle of a game and refuse to go in. Just, yeah, weirdness all around.
Yeah, very weird situation. I wonder what happened there. I don't know if we'll ever get the answer, but we move, right? We move on.
Exactly. Tomorrow comes, as they say, for anyone that happens to be an Expedition 33 fan. Leaving, I like this comment. The run game was pretty bad in short yardage situations. What's the metric for that? I don't know, Lee, but you're 1,000% right. And I feel like it's been a thing for a couple of years now. In short yardage, they get blown up. And I think it's because, Steph, that is nut cutting time, essentially, right? Defense knows you're going to run. Offense knows you're going to run. And the Niners, look, it is what it is. They do not have an offensive line stacked with first-round picks, right? And I get it. Some guys are good that aren't drafted in the first round, but generally, first-round picks are the biggest, strongest guys, the physically most dominant, impressive guys. And in short yardage, that matters sometimes. And I feel like the Niners get blown up in short yardage. Kyle's very predictable in short yardage, I think, and they have struggled there. And it's not been a one-year thing. It's been a multiple-year thing.
They also don't really have a typical short yardage back, that you can big kind of hamster kind of guy that you can have in there. Maybe Jordan Mason could have filled that role, but for whatever reason, they never really loved Jordan Mason. And I'll also say, and I don't have a stat for this, but it feels like one of their most successful plays on short yardage was the quarterback sneak, which is not, necessarily part of the run game. But yeah, you want to be able to convert those with your running back. You should be able to. And I feel like they have to kind of revert to doing the quarterback sneak because it is kind of what they're most successful at in those, 1 to 2 yard situations.
Remember the play in the Packers playoff game where Trent Williams went in motion? That was an awesome short yardage idea. Do some creative stuff like that. I feel like they could break that out again. Just some of these guys, who is it? Who's the friggin' giant that they have? Mason Pline. He's like a tight end, right? Isn't he 6'7" or some stuff?
Mason Pline? 49ers UDFA tight end?
Yeah. No, I'm saying he could go in motion and take that Trent spot and do blocking in short yardage.
I don't know.
They got enough big bodies. If you don't want to do it with him, do it with Nick Zakelj then. Can that guy actually work? As Luis Aguilar says, what the hell is Zakelj at this point? His spot has to be in jeopardy. What is he doing on the team? He's not playing regularly, I'll tell you that.
Well, maybe with a better tight end too, with Luke Farrell, maybe they could have a little bit more success at the short yardage thing. I don't know.
I got to say, this is not directed at you. It's more directed at Kyle Shanahan. I have never seen a team whose success was more dependent on the backup tight end in my life. They're making it sound like this signing is the key to them. Oh, we can't.
It better be.
We can't put George Kittle on pass routes until we have a really good blocking tight end too. What? Other teams, you think the Raiders are sitting there well, if we don't have a good tight end too, we can't throw the ball to Brock Bowers a lot. Get the hell out of here.
It does feel like we're putting a lot on Luke Farrell to be for this offense to be successful, for George Kittle to be successful. I agree. Might be too lofty of an expectation. But if he is what they've been telling us he is and how important he's going to be, then it better fix these short yardage situations. I don't know. But let's get back to the offensive line. Next on the list, another polarizing topic, and that is Jake Brendel. I'll say this on Jake Brendel, and it's very similar to everything we've been saying about the offensive line so far. And I do think what Chris Forrester says about Jake Brendel is absolutely ridiculous. I also think what fans think about Jake Brendel at times, not all the time, sometimes it's very much justified, but at times it's a little over-exaggerated how bad he is. He is bad, or he was bad at least in the 2024 season. But I think there's room for improvement there. There needs to be. Like, look, I think there's some good at Jake Brendel. He actually had the third lowest blown block percentage among all centers in 2024. He's certainly not the best. He never will be, nor was he ever. I don't think he was. He's probably number 3 or 4 on the list of centers that the 49ers have had since, the Kyle Shanahan became the head coach of this team. And I don't know where Chris Forster got that he's like the best that they've ever had. That's kind of crazy. I think he's pretty cheap. That's nice. He's not that good in pass protection. Okay in run blocking, which again, that's what 49ers will value the most. That's what offensive line coach will value the most. So Jake Brendel, I mean, what can you say about him?
Well, and it wasn't just Forrester that was talking about Kyle Shanahan at the owners meeting. Quote, I thought Jake played well. When you study centers throughout the league and things like that, Jake's up there. When it comes to his pass protection, a lot of these guys get mismatched against head-up noses, and some of these defensive tackles they have to go against. I think Jake does protection as good as anyone in this league. I think he's always been a pretty good run player for us. Look, if you're going to just excuse away a guy's troubles in pass protection by saying he gets matched up with, a nose head-on, okay, then great. Then nothing bad counts, because apparently if you get matched up head-on with a nose, you're not responsible for pass blocking.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think he's not as bad as sometimes some people make him out to be. If you look at center play, again, throughout the league, it's not going to be very good, always across the board. So I think he's slightly, I don't want to even say slightly, I think he's below average, but, maybe not by too much.
I like this comment from Luis, who says Brendel's the McGlinchey of centers. 2 plays a game where the team's got to have it and he gets destroyed.
I can see that.
And that is sort of the life of an offensive lineman, right? You make 88 good plays and nobody cares. You make 2 bad ones and everyone's killing you. And, that's the clip that gets put on social media. That's the one everybody talks about. That's when you get circled and all the memes and the GIFs come out. So that is definitely the life of an offensive lineman, and that is not fair.
I think one of the most egregious things was just the penalties. Those are killer. And there's a couple guys on the offensive line last year that, just in those moments contributed to the 49ers not being able to dig themselves out of a hole because, they're putting them in bad down and distance situations with these penalties. All those things, matter in the momentum of a game, in the momentum of, the 3-4 downs that you have to convert, right? And we saw last year the 49ers be in a lot of negative situations. And a lot of, some of that had to do with penalties and moving those chains back. So yeah, Brendel, definitely one of the worst, 10 penalties in 2024. So that's one area that he can improve, and hopefully, we do see that.
Luke Walsh says, I wish the Niners grabbed free agent center Dahlman. Me too, Luke.
We all did.
Me
Jeez.
too. We were all hoping for it, unfortunately.
So I think that's the worst part of the 49ers offensive line decisions is that if someone was as bad as Jake Brendel was last year, bring someone in to compete with him. Like they didn't address it at all.
And it's frustrating when we're sitting here on June 24th and the team has what, $40 million in cap space? And that's all Drew Dahlman would have cost you? Like, you can have two good centers. Well, you signed Drew Dahlman. Oh, he's really good. And then you got Brendo as a backup, and he can be really good too. Like, that's okay. So what are you worried about having too many good offensive linemen? So yeah, I wish they did sign him, to be honest with you. But again, it goes back to they don't just think he's good enough. They think he's really good. So it's, we're all sitting here saying you got to improve this area of your team. As they evaluate it, they're saying, no, we don't. Like, there's nothing, there's no fire here. We're literally arguing if something is on fire or not.
Yeah. And the 49ers seem to think it's okay. Obviously going to be a position that we're going to be keeping a close eye on in 2025. It is kind of like the not McKivitz, well, sort of like McKivitz, but also the McGlinchey thing, where once you have that reputation with the fan base that you are a bad offensive lineman,
yep,
it almost doesn't matter what you do. Like, he could be better this year, and people are still going to think he is just straight up bad. So best of luck to Brendel.
Yeah, there's always going to be those one or two plays a game that guys are going to point to, right? Or are going to say, exactly. See, he's still bad. And it's like, well, no, actually, that's the only play from the game. So yeah, that is got to be frustrating from their perspective. Steve-O says they can't develop O-line. That's why they don't draft it high. I don't know if I agree with that. Like, Colton McKivitz was what, a 5th round pick? He's been the starter. Now, he's been okay. I'm not telling you he's been amazing, but they got a league average starter in the 5th round. Spencer Burford was a 4th round pick. He's been okay. He was taken, later in the draft. Dominick Puni was a 3rd round pick. He's been really good. So the guys that they do pick in the later rounds, they do play them and they do get some production out of them. That's kind of, to me, why it's frustrating, because it's like, if you could do that with Colton McKivitz, what could you do with a 1st or 2nd round pick on the offensive line?
Right, because all these later round guys, like you said, they end up playing. They're never at that elite level, but they're certainly serviceable. And a lot of the time that's okay, because usually they're on cheap contracts anyway. And then they kind of have this rinse and repeat where then they let these guys walk once it's time for a payday, let them get a crazy bag from someone else, because that's how crazy the offensive line market is. But, I think the 49ers did something right when they drafted Dominick Puni, Rob. And I mean, he's, to me, is the 2nd best offensive lineman on the line outside of Trent. He's like the anchor on the other side of the line. And he's been super reliable. I know Kyle Shanahan said like he plays like a 4-year vet. And I really think he does, like just the way that he was able to come in, start right away. And you figure like you're always a little bit nervous. He had a great training camp, but to start the season, you're like, at some point he's going to hit a wall or he's going to start making mistakes. And, he did like kind of late in the season. But that might've just been the rookie wall from just playing more games than he was probably used to or whatnot. But I think overall he did a tremendous job, and he was on the all rookie team. So I think that's impressive for his first year. It is, I'll always bring this up, it's not lost on me that the 49ers were almost forced to play him and to start him because of all the injuries. Mm-hmm. I kind of wonder how long it would have taken for us to see him had he not gotten that opportunity because of all the injuries in training camp last year, right? So yeah, a lot of these guys, as we've said, they like to keep them in their back pocket and develop them, in the background for a year or two before they start, giving them more opportunities. But maybe if these guys get their opportunity from the start, they could actually be better. And not everyone's going to be a Dominick Puni, but like I do think having that real game experience was big for them. And 35 pressures on 632 pass blocking snaps last year. So again, like Puni's kind of one of those guys who, like Trent Williams, and not at that same level, but like Trent Williams, he is good at both run blocking and pass protection. And I think that's huge for this team. 7 penalties in 2024. Would like to see him clean that up. But there's definitely an opportunity for that.
I agree with you completely on the development. We never see Dominick Puni if Spencer Burford and John Feliciano don't get hurt. We never see him. Kyle's never going to put a rookie in that spot over a veteran guy, especially a guy like Burford that's been in the system for multiple years. But it worked out for the 49ers. They didn't, people sometimes say, well, the Niners lucked out because this is a late round pick and he ended up being good. It's like, yeah, that's kind of true. But also, like, they didn't draft these guys to suck. Like they drafted Dominick Puni because they thought he had a chance to be a good player. And he was a good player. And think about where they would be if he was, didn't emerge last year. Like they would have so many holes on this damn offensive line. Aaron Banks may be back if Dominick Puni's not as good, because you don't want to have 2 starting guard spots to fill in one offseason. Who the hell knows? But Puni has been a revelation. I absolutely love the kid. They need a guy like, they need a couple guys on the offensive line where you don't have to fake it, right? Kyle Shanahan's system, and Joe Thomas has talked about this, and other guys have talked about this. You don't need the most physically gifted players in Kyle Shanahan's system on the offensive line because of the angles and the stuff. He puts you in a really good position to succeed, which is great. But you know what you can still do? Still have really good physically talented people in that position. It's not against the rules. So then when you have the combination of both of those things, it really helps the damn offensive line, which is why Trent Williams is so good. And it's why Puni is so good. And they should look to do it more. And I hope that they do, because it's one area of the team where I really think it would help make up for, like, what if Kyle Shanahan can't bail us out with the perfect call in the situation? Like sometimes you need to just win on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what he does in his second year, because you can only expect that there will be some growth from Dominick Puni. Coaches talk about his work ethic, and he'll probably take another step, hopefully, in 2025, and that should go a long way for this offensive line. And that kind of brings us to the next guy, the last starter at right tackle, Colton McKivitz. And we were just talking about him a little bit ago. I kind of feel like we forgot about him a little bit last year, unless you were obsessed with him in 2022 and how bad he was. Like, maybe you didn't, but I at least kind of forgot about him last year in a good way. And as Callie says in the comments, like, Puni helped out McKivitz for sure. If so, like, great, right? It's very well possible that he did. We talk about Trent Williams being able to help, the guy next to him. Well, I think Puni's able to help Colton McKivitz for sure. I think we even saw a couple plays where Puni's very good at keeping his head on a swivel and looking for work. And sometimes if some guy misses an assignment, you got Puni who can maybe clean it up or something like that. So there's little plays here and there where things like that can happen. But in any case, like, I think McKivitz kind of became a little more than serviceable in 2024. And I think he did make strides compared to 2023. And 2023 was his first year as a starter. It was after a couple years of him developing in the background. So you're not really expecting him to be a guy, right? But they give him that opportunity. He takes his lumps, and cuts his teeth in that season in 2023. But man, if you look at his like PFF grade, and I know PFF grades aren't everything, but if we just look at that from 2023 to 2024, his overall grade went up by 7 points. His pass blocking grade went up by 11.3 points. His run block grade went up 2.6 points, and he went from 9 sacks allowed in 2023 to just 2 in 2024. So that's the kind of growth that I think we want to see from every offensive lineman that, is on this team and is starting, and certainly one who's on his second year as a starter. Like, that's the kind of growth you want to see. So, back to Puni, like, a little bit. I think him going into his second year is going to be huge. McKivitz going into his third year, hopefully we could see that an improvement or, stay at that baseline that we saw in 2024.
I agree with everything you said. Benali says McKivitz legacy contract year soon.
Every time. Yep.
That's wonderful.
Contract years.
Frisbee Life on Twitch. We can congratulate McKivitz on the $70 million contract he'll get from somebody else next year. He's 28 years old. So like he's in his physical prime right now. You're right. Like he's probably been better than serviceable. And he was a guy that got a lot of crap. And then, you don't really get praise when that happens. Like when you turn it around as an offensive lineman, you just get quiet. Like people just stop kind of complaining.
It's good. It. Like, yes, offensive line is like that one position where if I never notice you, that is great. It is great for you, So, and Puni absolutely, I think, helped McKivitz's case a lot. Now, Rob, we talk about a lot of players who are due for a contract soonish, or they're going into their contract year. Jauan Jennings, one of those players. And we're kind of wondering, hey, like, should the 49ers maybe look to extend this player before the season starts? Would you put McKivitz on that list?
Here's the thing. Maybe, but then Jalen Moore got what did he get? $30 million from the Chiefs?
Yeah, but I'm talking about extending him now, not next year. At the end of the year, yes, he's going to be closer to free agency, and you start thinking about what the market's going to be at that point in time, and it's going to be outrageous number. 49ers don't want to pay that. So if they want to get him at a good price, I mean, now would kind of be the time to do it.
If he wants to sign, if he's willing to sign one of those Diamador Lenore type deals where it's not even close to the top of the market, great. Or one of the Dre Greenlaw deals, he got, not this most recent contract, obviously, but the extension he signed with the Niners where you were like, wait, what? Dre Greenlaw signed? If he wants to do something like that, great. I'm all for it. And to be honest with you, and this might be a hot take, I would choose to pay McKivitz over Jauan Jennings if I can only pick one of the two.
I think that's actually pretty reasonable, and I'll give my 2 cents why I think that. The 49ers are coming up on needing a tackle, and a left tackle in particular, badly in a couple years. We don't exactly know when that's going to be. Maybe. Trent Williams wants to play till he's 40. We all support that. But I think in the back of the 49ers mind, they know they're going to have to do that at some point. You're going to have to allocate either a top pick via a trade for a tackle or a top pick via drafting said player, for an elite tackle, hopefully. So that's coming down the line. Do you really want to have to do that for 2 tackles?
Right.
They already hate to draft offensive linemen. Do we really expect that they're going to hit on 2 in such a short amount of time? I don't know. And also, one of the questions I still have about this offensive line, we've talked about all the starters. Who's going to be the swing tackle or the backup tackle this year?
I think Burford might be, believe it or not. He's been
that's intriguing. That's an intriguing option.
He's been there when Trent hasn't been there this the mini camp and stuff. He's got experience at both spots. It's probably going to be him. I mean, they tried to get DJ Humphries. That didn't work out. Andre Dillard, and who was the other offensive lineman?
Austin Pleasance, who I guess some of the beat writers have said he's been looking good in OTAs. I'll wait to pass judgment there until we get to see them in training camp and in the preseason. But they have options. So along with that, Rob, if they let Colton McKivitz walk after the season and they don't look to get a cheap extension this offseason, which they probably won't, it's June, who knows, and they let him walk, do you then move Burford to right tackle? Is that an option for them?
I think it's something that they've probably considered, but don't put it past them to try to get a deal done with McKivitz during the year. Sometimes they do that. Lenore signed during the season, so it's possible. I think Burford at right tackle is definitely a thing that could happen. And I think in their minds, again, I think they're always more comfortable with the known. I think they're in their minds, trying Burford at right tackle is probably a safer option than signing some unknown guy that they don't know that could play in their system. So who knows if they'll actually do that. Nicholas Petit Ferrer was the other guy. Remember, he signed for like a day and they cut him because he's been horrible in his whole career. He was the other guy that I couldn't think of. And I want to make this point about the offensive line. I've said it before, but I want to say it again. PFF they ranked every position in the NFL. And they had Trent Williams, I think, was like the 4th best tackle. And they had Dominick Puni as the 10th best guard in the NFL. And so for a unit that everybody says is horrible, the 49ers offensive line, 2 of the 5 positions are top 10 best in the league. So it can't possibly be as bad as people say.
I don't think it is. I think, again, last year it felt a hell of a lot worse just because of the injuries and also because Purdy was holding on to the ball too long. And the minute you see Purdy leave the pocket, your automatic assumption is that, at least watching live in game, is that, oh God, someone allowed a pressure.
Right.
And that's why he had to bail, when in actuality, that's not always the case, as we saw last year.
Yes. That's what I mean. Somehow the quarterback remains blameless in any offensive line evaluation. That's just not true. Like, there are a lot of stories of Russell Wilson and other guys who are very mobile, kind of, like you said, creating pressure. And then the offensive line is like, dude, if I don't know where you're going to be, I don't know how to block. Like, we're trying to form a pocket around you, but if we don't know where you are, it's impossible to form that. So I do think that has to factor into the evaluations as well.
Yeah, they don't have eyes in the back of their head. But one quick note on Burford, he's a free agent after this year too. So, yeah, maybe he'll be like the Jalen Moore of this year, and they also let him walk after this year. That'd be my guess.
Depends if he can get that Jalen Moore money. You got to take it if you're an offensive lineman.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And that's the other thing too. It was like, oh, this offensive line is terrible. One guy got paid that had coming off his worst year of his career in Aaron Banks. And then the guy that wasn't even good enough to start got paid. So the NFL thinks the 49ers line is okay.
Well, I think that's just how it is for all free agent offensive linemen. It's absolutely nuts. And that, goes back to the point I made to start the show, which was basically that across the board in the NFL, good offensive linemen are few and far between. So anytime that there's one that has even started before, I'm not even kidding, Rob. Like, you literally just have to have starting experience, because other teams think like he started, like he's good enough to start for us too. We should sign him to a big contract. Like, that's it. Like, so that tells you the state of offensive linemen across the league.
Right. Like a couple of years ago, it was like, remember, I forget who it was. Somebody hired a coach, and in part of their like reason for why they hired him, it was like, he's a friend of Sean McVay. Remember that? I can't remember who the coach was. Damn it. But it was like, he's a friend of Sean McVay. People were like, really? Like, are we serious with this? But yeah, if you've got a pulse and you've started a game at offensive line, you too can get an NFL contract.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous, but hoping for better things for the offensive line. I do expect it. I do think also Brock Purdy will be better and not hold on to the ball as long as he did last year.
All right, I think we've covered everything on the offensive line. Is there anything else you wanted to get in?
Oh, I might get nauseous if I have to talk about the offensive line for a minute longer.
Okay. Let's change gears then, because I wanted to mention this. Ricky Pearsall was a guest with Matt Mayoko on the 49ers Talk podcast, and he had a couple of interesting quotes, especially in light of things happening with Brandon Ayuk, which maybe we'll get into. But Ricky Pearsall talking about his life and his shooting last year, which, I thought the 49ers were very sensitive last year, and smartly so. Like, hey, we don't want to keep asking him about this because you don't want to re-traumatize him, right? But now, some time has passed. So there's a lower chance of that, so to speak. And he got into it with Mayoko, and he said something that when he said it, I literally had to stop it and replay it because I was like, how can this be real life? But Matt asked him, after the shooting happens, what's going through your head? Here's Ricky Pearsall.
At that moment, I was kind of freaking out. Blood was everywhere. I was kind of looking at the location of where the bullet was in my chest, and I was, this is worrisome right now. Like I don't know what's about to happen next. And she came over, and when she was praying for me, I don't know, like a weight got lifted off my chest, and I just felt grace. Like I just felt good. And after that, I think that's when the video was taking me walking to the stretcher. And that's why I look so relaxed. And people were like, my family was asking, like, why you look so relaxed? Like, yeah, I look like I'm in pain, but like, I don't look like I'm freaking out or yelling at anybody or anything. Like, I just felt, Joel's prayers were heard. And yeah, that weight was lifted off for sure.
Who gets shot in the chest, Steph, looks down and says, well, this is worrisome. Like, what? I would have been freaking out.
I think it was probably a little bit more than that at the moment, and now maybe he can be a little more nonchalant about it. But I think, and he's spoken about this as he spoke about it then, that the police sergeant coming over and calming him down, I think, made a world of a difference in those moments, and helped save his life and his sanity in that moment as well. Which ended up being a big thing.
There's the video if you're watching on the stream. I remember in August just literally sitting at my fantasy football draft, the night of my fantasy football draft, and I got the alert Ricky Pearsall has been shot, and I was like, what? Like, how can this even be real life? Just an incredible that he's alive, number one. Number two, he was able to come back and play football ever. Number three, he came back in season last year and didn't even require any surgery of any kind.
And he was pretty good. He was pretty good last year when he finally did step on the field. And I think it just speaks to the kind of guy that Pearsall is, because I do think he was so anxious to get back out there that when he finally had that opportunity, I think it just supercharged him a little bit to want to get out there and perform. And I think he did really well. You almost wonder, like, had none of that happened and he started week one, like, would he have been as successful, or, did the time that he missed and everything that he went through kind of like built him up a little bit to be like, yo, like, I'm not going to go through all of that to not have a kick-ass career.
Yeah. Remember he told Lynch in the hospital, I can play against the Jets.
Yeah.
It was August.
To get out of there. Like, he wanted to get on the field so bad. And so that, like, I feel like he almost felt guilty that he wasn't out there.
Yeah.
And he feel like he had to make it up to the team and, play his ass off when he was out there.
He said a couple other things. He talked about, I like this one. Basically, Matt asked, like, hey, do you feel more prepared going into year two?
Absolutely. I'm obviously more comfortable in my environment. I know my teammates better, the system better. Like, I just feel like I'm just going to play a lot faster, knowing exactly what's coming up, exactly what to prepare for in the off season to get into training camp. And, for me, just, taking care of my body is probably the most important thing. And that's something that I've learned along the way. In college, it's just, grind. Well, the same grind goes into, recovery purposes too. So, I still got to, make sure I'm doing that as well in the off season. But yeah, man, I'm super excited and I know exactly what to expect.
There's a reason guys make a jump from year one to year two. Anybody is going to be better the second time around doing something than the first time, just because you've gone through it. It's different. And you've had a whole offseason of specifically training to do that thing, as opposed to preparing for the NFL draft and the combine. So it is a very, very different thing. I'm so excited to see Ricky Pearsall this year, Steph. I was so bummed when they said he wasn't going to be on the field and he was going to miss all of minicamp, because he hasn't really had any minicamp or training camp. Because remember, before the shooting, he had a hamstring and he had the shoulder. So he hasn't really gone through that. And I really want to see him out on the field, because when I watch him play, I think this guy looks like there's something here.
Yeah, he absolutely does. And, his going into his second year, I think we expect a lot from him, because I think in particular wide receivers, I think settle in a little bit more just to the playbook and the assignments, as he was saying, like kind of just the timing and knowing his space and being comfortable in that is huge. So, and he already looked, like we said, he already looked good in his first year. And that was with him probably knowing just a percentage of all of that, right? So I do think in year two, with the offseason work that we've seen him do with Purdy in particular, like that's going to pay huge dividends. And, with Purdy as well, wanting to put a focus and emphasis on getting the ball out quicker and getting back to, quick timing throws and things like that. I think the work they put in this offseason is going to, allow for the second year leap for Ricky Pearsall, Cowan as well. And yeah, I'm just really excited to see how he does. I do expect he'll be back for training camp. I know he had the hamstring thing, but I remember Kyle saying that he'd probably be healthy by mini camp, but they just at that point weren't really going to risk it. So they just want to have him ready for training camp. And I can't wait to see how he does there.
Yeah, Kyle said he was healthy enough to get on the field for the last day of minicamp, but he said, as Kyle called it, I think he was like, there's one day of school left. Like, what is the point? Why not just be extra cautious?
Yeah.
Which I guess I understand. And Brock actually did talk about going to work out with Brock Purdy because Ricky Pearsall talked about going to work out with Brock Purdy. Ricky was in Fort Lauderdale, I think, and Brock was in Jacksonville. And so Brock invited him to work, and Ricky was like, I would have gone if I was in California, but it was even easier for me because I was in Florida. But here's Ricky talking about what he works on when he works out with Brock Purdy.
Just continue to get on the same page and discuss and communicate different routes, different looks that we see, depending on what the defenses are doing, and different depths and alignments that I need to be on in certain routes that I got to be on for him to, just blindly throw the ball to me. And, as far as building a relationship with him, like personally, just off the field stuff, communicating in the locker room, just enjoying each other, man. It's natural. It's never anything that I even think about or force.
So they're working on it, which, again, there's a reason guys make a jump from year one to year two. And I think with Brock, that's especially important because he has to throw with so much anticipation and so much of their game is timing. That stuff comes with repetition and with practice. And so they have to get those reps in sometimes. And it's great that they did, Steph, because they didn't get those in minicamp.
Yeah, it's going to go a long way for all of them. And that, I hate to always go back to the former quarterback, but that's just one of the things that pissed me off a little bit, that like, not only were you rarely, if ever, working with your wide receivers in the offseason, you wouldn't even answer their texts. Not even George Kittle. Who leaves George Kittle on red? I mean, come on.
They used to have to go to his house to get a hold of him. They had to go to his house like a friggin' pilgrim. Like, what year is it?
It's just so weird. I'm just so glad that like Brock Purdy sees the importance of that. I do think for him especially, having that down and that chemistry with his receivers is especially important. He knows it. And I just appreciate that so much.
He checks all the boxes of all the things you want to see your guy do. Is he invested at the quarterback position? And it just every time check.
And good on Pearsall for, wanting to work with him this offseason as well. I mean, he could have just as easily said, no, like I'll do my own thing. I got someone throwing me the ball over here. I got it. There's receivers who do that as well. But I think Pearsall knows how important it is as well to get on the same page with Brock Purdy and build that chemistry. Even last year, spending extra time together after practice to try to get that down. And now, they had all this offseason to do it. So it should really blossom this year, that connection.
when Pearsall was drafted, I interviewed Herm Edwards, who coached him at Arizona State. And I asked him, like, what kind of guy is Ricky? And he was like, if Pearsall had to drive across the state of California every day to go meet with Brock Purdy, he will do it because that's the kind of guy he is. So a freaking man. Give me it. I need it. I need it in my life. And the 49ers need it because who knows what the hell is going to happen with Brandon Ayuk? Who knows how much longer Juwan Jennings is going to be with the team? Like, we don't know how long DeMarcus Robinson's going to be suspended for. We need Ricky Pearsall. This isn't just like, hey,
he was drafted in the first round, Rob. Like, the work ethic better be there, you know, like that. All that needs to be there. We need to see an improvement. We want to be able to see him stay healthy for the full season. I think after some of the injuries he sustained last year, shooting aside, like I think we want to see him be able to stay healthy, and you know, hopefully him taking care of his body, as he mentioned on 49ers Talk. We see that pay dividends in 2025 as well.
Strawberry React says, I think Brock is also more competitive and just loves playing football more than Jimmy Garoppolo. I would agree. Jimmy treated football like a job, which is fine. But Jimmy was like, hey, when I'm off the clock, I'm off the clock, which not everybody.
I mean, honestly, respect. That's how I treat my job.
Like, that's the thing. It is a job to some people. And like, not everybody has to live, breathe, and, you know, dream football. You'd like everybody to, but not everybody is like that. That's just not the reality of the situation. And yeah, I agree. Like, I know what it's like to have a job that you hate. And when you're off, you want to be off. Not now. Now this is my dream job, but I didn't always work this job. I was a cashier at Big Y. Let me tell you, that was not fun time.
What is Big Y?
It's a supermarket. It's East Coast, I guess, apparently. But let me tell you, that is dealing with the public every day. It can get dicey at times, especially with some of those old ladies that come in right before. The old lady, the two worst were the old ladies that came in right before closing and the old ladies that would be waiting outside the supermarket before.
They're like knocking.
Oh, my God. I was like, lady, the peaches will be here, okay? I know they're on sale. We're not going to run out. You don't need to show up a half hour before we open. Oh, my God, it was the worst. Anyway, sorry to go off on a tangent there, but the scars run deep. What can I tell you?
Yeah, clearly.
That's going to do it for this edition of Bully Ball. Thank you, everybody. Like this video. Please subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to Steph's YouTube channel as well. Jason Aponte, thank you for letting me fill in. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Your positional previews will continue next week. Have you decided what position group you want to do next week?
I am not. Is it my turn to pick? Because I think Jay has picked the last couple of.
Well, it's the way to pass the buck there. There you go. Let's just hope he shows up for the show. How about that? Damn. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, everybody. We'll talk to you next week.
Peace.